Side 3, Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, continuing on page 115. You wouldn't even have known it snowed at all. There was hardly any snow on the sidewalks, but it was freezing cold, and I took my red hunting hat out of my pocket and put it on. I didn't give a damn how I looked. I even put the ear laps down. I wished I knew who'd swiped my gloves at Pensy, because my hands were freezing. Not that I'd have done much about it, even if I had known. I'm one of these very yellow guys. I try not to show it, but I am. For instance, if I'd found out at Pensy who'd stolen my gloves, I probably would have gone down to the crook's room and said, "Okay, how about handing over those gloves?" Then the crook that had stolen them probably would have said, his voice very innocent and all, "What gloves?" Then what I probably would have done, I'd have gone in his closet and found the gloves somewhere, hidden in his goddamn galoshes or something, for instance. I'd have taken them out and showed them to the guy and said, "I suppose these are your goddamn gloves?" Then the crook probably would have given me this very phony, innocent look and said, "I never saw those gloves before in my life. If they're yours, take 'em. I don't want the goddamn things." Then I probably would have just stood there for about 5 minutes. I'd have the damn gloves right in my hand and all, but I'd feel I ought to sock the guy in the jaw or something, break his goddamn jaw. Only I wouldn't have the guts to do it. I'd just stand there trying to look tough. What I might do, I might say something very cutting and snotty to rile him up, instead of socking him in the jaw. Anyway, if I did say something very cutting and snotty, he'd probably get up and come over to me and say, "Listen, Caulfield, are you calling me a crook?" Then, instead of saying, "You're goddamn right I am, you dirty crooked bastard," all I probably would have said would be, "All I know is my goddamn gloves were in your goddamn galoshes." Right away then, the guy would know for sure that I wasn't going to take a sock at him, and he probably would have said, "Listen, let's get this straight. Are you calling me a thief?" Then I probably would have said, "Nobody's calling anybody a thief. All I know is my gloves were in your goddamn galoshes." It could go on like that for hours. Finally, though, I'd leave his room without even taking a sock at him. I'd probably go down to the can and sneak a cigarette and watch myself getting tough in the mirror. Anyway, that's what I thought about the whole way back to the hotel. It's no fun to be yellow. Maybe I'm not all yellow. I don't know. I think maybe I'm just partly yellow and partly the type that doesn't give much of a damn if they lose their gloves. One of my troubles is I never care too much when I lose something. It used to drive my mother crazy when I was a kid. Some guys spend days looking for something they lost. I never seem to have anything that if I lost it I'd care too much. Maybe that's why I'm partly yellow. It's no excuse, though. It really isn't. What you should be is not yellow at all. If you're supposed to sock somebody in the jaw, and you sort of feel like doing it, you should do it. I'm just no good at it, though. I'd rather push a guy out the window or chop his head off with an axe than sock him in the jaw. I hate fist fights. I don't mind getting hit so much, although I'm not crazy about it naturally. But what scares me most in a fist fight is the guy's face. I can't stand looking at the other guy's face is my trouble. It wouldn't be so bad if you could both be blindfolded or something. It's a funny kind of yellowness when you come to think of it. But it's yellowness all right. I'm not kidding myself. The more I thought about my gloves and my yellowness, the more depressed I got, and I decided while I was walking and all to stop off and have a drink somewhere. I'd only had 3 drinks at Ernie's, and I didn't even finish the last one. One thing I have, it's a terrific capacity. I can drink all night and not even show it if I'm in the mood. Once, at the Wooten School, this other boy, Raymond Goldfarb, and I bought a pint of scotch and drank it in the chapel one Saturday night where nobody'd see us. He got stinking, but I hardly didn't even show it. I just got very cool and nonchalant. I puked before I went to bed, but I didn't really have to. I forced myself. Anyway, before I got to the hotel, I started to go in this dumpy-looking bar, but 2 guys came out drunk as hell and wanted to know where the subway was. One of them was this very Cuban-looking guy, and he kept breathing his stinking breath in my face while I gave him directions. I ended up not even going in the damn bar. I just went back to the hotel. The whole lobby was empty, It smelled like 50 million dead cigars. It really did. I wasn't sleepy or anything, but I was feeling sort of lousy, and depressed and all. I almost wished I was dead. Then, all of a sudden, I got in this big mess. The first thing when I got in the elevator guy said to me, "Interested in having a good time, fella, or is it too late for you?" "How do you mean?" I said. I didn't know what he was driving at or anything. "Interested in a little tale tonight?" "Me?" I said, which was a very dumb answer, but it's quite embarrassing when somebody comes right up and asks you a question like that. "How old are you, Chief?" the elevator guy said. "Why?" I said. 22. "Uh-huh. Well, how about it? You interested? $5 to throw, $15 the whole night." He looked at his wristwatch. "Till noon. $5 to throw, $15 till noon." "Okay," I said. It was against my principles and all, but I was feeling so depressed I didn't even think. That's the whole trouble. When you're feeling very depressed, you can't even think. "Okay, what? A throw or till noon? I gotta know." "Just a throw." "Okay, what room you in?" I looked at the red thing with my number on it on my key. 1222, I said. I was already sort of sorry I'd let the thing start rolling, but it was too late now. "Okay, I'll send a girl up in about 15 minutes. He opened the doors and I got out. "Hey, is she good looking?" I asked him. "I don't want any old bag." "No old bag. Don't worry about it, Chief." "Who do I pay?" "Her," he said. "Let's go, Chief." He shut the doors, practically right in my face. I went to my room and put some water on my hair, but you can't really comb a crew cut or anything. Then I tested to see if my breath stank from so many cigarettes and the scotch and sodas I drank at Ernie's. All you do is hold your hand under your mouth and blow your breath up toward the old nostrils. It didn't seem to stink much, but I brushed my teeth anyway. Then I put on another clean shirt. I knew I didn't have to get all dolled up for a prostitute or anything, but it sort of gave me something to do. I was a little nervous. I was starting to feel pretty sexy and all, but I was a little nervous anyway. If you want to know the truth, I'm a virgin. I really am. I've had quite a few opportunities to lose my virginity and all, but I've never got around to it yet. Something always happens. For instance, if you're at a girl's house, her parents always come home at the wrong time, or you're afraid they will. Or if you're in the back seat of somebody's car, there's always somebody's date in the front seat, some girl, I mean, that always wants to know what's going on all over the whole goddamn car. I mean, some girl in front keeps turning around to see what the hell's going on. Anyway, something always happens. I came quite close to doing it a couple of times, though. One time in particular, I remember. Something went wrong, though. I don't even remember what anymore. The thing is, most of the time, when you're coming pretty close to doing it with a girl that isn't a prostitute or anything, I mean, she keeps telling you to stop. The trouble with me is, I stop. Most guys don't. You can't help it. You never know whether they really want you to stop, or whether they're just scared as hell, or whether they're just telling you to stop so that if you do go through with it, the blame will be on you, not them. Anyway, I keep stopping. The trouble is, I get to feeling sorry for them. I mean, most girls are so dumb and all. After you neck them for a while, you can really watch them losing their brains. You take a girl when she really gets passionate, she just hasn't any brains. I don't know. They tell me to stop, so I stop. I always wish I hadn't after I take them home, but I keep doing it anyway. Anyway, while I was putting on another clean shirt, I sort of figured this was my big chance in a way. I figured if she was a prostitute and all, I could get in some practice on her in case I ever get married or anything. I worry about that stuff sometimes. I read this book once at the Wooten School that had this very sophisticated, suave, sexy guy in it. Monsieur Blanchard was his name. I can still remember. It was a lousy book, but this Blanchard guy was pretty good. He had this big chateau and all on the Riviera in Europe, and all he did in his spare time was beat women off with a club. He was a real rake and all. but he knocked women out. He said in this one part that a woman's body is like a violin and all, and that it takes a terrific musician to play it right. It was a very corny book, I realized that, but I couldn't get that violin stuff out of my mind anyway. In a way, that's why I sort of wanted to get some practice in case I ever get married. Caulfield and his magic violin. Boy, it's corny, I realize, but it isn't too corny. I wouldn't mind being pretty good at that stuff. Half the time, if you really want to know the truth, when I'm horsing around with a girl, I have a hell of a lot of trouble just finding what I'm looking for God's sake, if you know what I mean. Take this girl that I just missed having sexual intercourse with, that I told you about. It took me about an hour to just get her goddamn brassiere off. By the time I did get it off, she was about ready to spit in my eye. Anyway, I kept walking around the room, waiting for this prostitute to show up. I kept hoping she'd be good-looking. I didn't care too much, though. I sort of just wanted to get it over with. Finally, somebody knocked on the door, and when I went to open it, I had my suitcase right in the way, and I fell over it and damn near broke my knee. I always pick a gorgeous time to fall over a suitcase or something. When I opened the door, this prostitute was standing there. She had a polo coat on and no hat. She was sort of a blonde, but you could tell she dyed her hair. She wasn't any old bag, though. "How do you do?" I said. Suave as hell, boy. "You the guy Maurice said?" she asked me. She didn't seem too goddamn friendly. "Is he the elevator boy?" "Yeah," she said. "Yes, I am. Come in, won't you?" I said. I was getting more and more nonchalant as it went along. I really was. She came in and took her coat off right away and sort of chucked it on the bed. She had on a green dress underneath. Then she sort of sat down sideways on the chair that went with the desk in the room and started jiggling her foot up and down. She crossed her legs and started jiggling this one foot up and down. She was very nervous for a prostitute. She really was. I think it was because she was young as hell. She was around my age. I sat down in the big chair next to her and offered her a cigarette. "I don't smoke," she said. She had a tiny little weeny-whiny voice. You could hardly hear her. She never said thank you either when you offered her something. She just didn't know any better. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Jim Steele," I said. "You got a watch on you," she said. She didn't care what the hell my name was, naturally. "Hey, how old are you anyways?" "Me? 22. "Like fun you are." It's a funny thing to say. It sounded like a real kid. You'd think a prostitute and all would say like hell you are, or cut the crap instead of like fun you are. "How old are you?" I asked her. "Old enough to know better," she said. She was really witty. "You got a watch on you?" she asked me again, and then she stood up and pulled her dress over her head. I certainly felt peculiar when she did that. I mean, she did it so sudden and all. I know you're supposed to feel pretty sexy when somebody gets up and pulls their dress over their head, but I didn't. Sexy was about the last thing I was feeling. I felt much more depressed than sexy. "You got a watch on you, hey?" No, I don't," I said. Boy, was I feeling peculiar. "What's your name?" I asked her. All she had on was this pink slip. It was really quite embarrassing. It really was. "Sonny," she said. "Let's go, hey?" "Don't you feel like talking for a while?" I asked her. It was a childish thing to say, but I was feeling so damn peculiar. "Are you in a very big hurry?" She looked at me like I was a madman. "What the heck you want to talk about?" she said. "I don't know, nothing special. I just thought perhaps you might care to chat for a while." She sat down in the chair next to the desk again. She didn't like it, though, you could tell. She started jiggling her foot again. Boy, she was a nervous girl. "Would you care for a cigarette now?" I said. I forgot she didn't smoke. "I don't smoke." Listen, if you're going to talk, do it. I got things to do. I couldn't think of anything to talk about, though. I thought of asking her how she got to be a prostitute and all, but I was scared to ask her. She probably wouldn't have told me anyway. You don't come from New York, do you? I said finally. That's all I could think of. Hollywood, she said. Then she got up and went over to where she'd put her dress down on the bed. You gotta hang her. I don't want to get my dress all wrinkly. It's brand clean. Sure, I said, right away. I was only too glad to get up and do something. I took her dress over to the closet and hung it up for her. It was funny. It made me feel sort of sad when I hung it up. I thought of her going in a store and buying it, and nobody in the store knowing she was a prostitute and all. The salesman probably just thought she was a regular girl when she bought it. It made me feel sad as hell. I don't know why exactly. I sat down again and tried to keep the old conversation going. She was a lousy conversationalist. Do you work every night? I asked her. It sounded sort of awful after I'd said it. Yeah. She was walking all around the room. She picked up the menu off the desk and read it. What do you do during the day? She sort of shrugged her shoulders. She was pretty skinny. Sleep, go to the show. She put down the menu and looked at me. Let's go, hey. I haven't got a... Look, I said. I don't feel very much like myself tonight. I've had a rough night. Honest to God, I'll pay you and all, but do you mind very much if we don't do it? Do you mind very much? The trouble was, I just didn't want to do it. I felt more depressed than sexy, if you want to know the truth. She was depressing. Her green dress hanging in the closet and all. And besides, I don't think I could ever do it with somebody that sits in a stupid movie all day long. I really don't think I could. She came over to me with this funny look on her face, like as if she didn't believe me. What's the matter? She said. Nothing's the matter. Boy, was I getting nervous. The thing is, I had an operation very recently. Yeah? Where? On my... what do you call it? My clavichord. Yeah? Where the hell's that? The clavichord? I said. Well, actually, it's in the spinal canal. I mean, it's quite a ways down in the spinal canal. Yeah, she said. That's tough. Then she sat down on my goddamn lap. You're cute. She made me so nervous, I just kept on lying my head off. I'm still recuperating, I told her. You look like a guy in the movies, you know. Who's this? You know I mean. What the heck's his name? I don't know, I said. She wouldn't get off my goddamn lap. Sure you know. He was in that picture with Melvine Douglas. The one that was Melvine Douglas's kid brother that falls off this boat. You know who I mean. No, I don't. I go to the movies as seldom as I can. Then she started getting funny, crude and all. Do you mind cutting it out? I said. I'm not in the mood. I just told you. I just had an operation. She didn't get up from my lap or anything, but she gave me this terrifically dirty look. Listen, she said. I was sleeping when that crazy Maurice woke me up. If you think I said I'd pay you for coming and all. I really will. I have plenty of dough. It's just that I'm practically just recovering from a very serious... What the heck did you tell that crazy Maurice you wanted a girl for, then? If you just had a goddamn operation on your goddamn... what do you call it? Huh? I thought I'd be feeling a lot better than I do. I was a little premature in my calculations. No kidding. I'm sorry. If you'll just get up a second, I'll get my wallet. I mean it. She was sore as hell, but she got up off my goddamn lap so that I could go over and get my wallet off the chiffonier. I took out a $5 bill and handed it to her. Thanks a lot, I told her. Thanks a million. This is a 5. It costs 10. She was getting funny, you could tell. I was afraid something like that would happen. I really was. Maurice said 5, I told her. He said 15 till noon and only 5 for a throw. 10 for a throw. He said 5. I'm sorry, I really am, but that's all I'm going to shell out. She sort of shrugged her shoulders, the way she did before, and then she said, very cold, "Do you mind getting me my frock, or would it be too much trouble?" She was a pretty spooky kid. Even with that little bitty voice she had, she could sort of scare you a little bit. If she'd been a big old prostitute with a lot of makeup on her face and all, she wouldn't have been half as spooky. I went and got her dress for her. She put it on and all, and then she picked up her polo coat off the bed. "So long, Crumb Bum," she said. "So long," I said. I didn't thank her or anything. I'm glad I didn't. 14. After old Sonny was gone, I sat in the chair for a while and smoked a couple of cigarettes. It was getting daylight outside. Boy, I felt miserable. I felt so depressed you can't imagine. What I did, I started talking, sort of out loud, to Allie. I do that sometimes when I get very depressed. I keep telling him to go home and get his bike and meet me in front of Bobby Fallon's house. Bobby Fallon used to live quite near us in Maine. This is years ago. Anyway, what happened was one day Bobby and I were going over to Lake Seetebigo on our bikes. We were going to take our lunches and all, and our BB guns. We were kids and all. And we thought we could shoot something with our BB guns. Anyway, Allie heard us talking about it, and he wanted to go, and I wouldn't let him. I told him he was a child. So once in a while now, when I get very depressed, I keep saying to him, "Okay, go home and get your bike and meet me in front of Bobby's house. Hurry up." It wasn't that I didn't used to take him with me when I went somewhere. I did. But that one day I didn't. He didn't get sore about it. He never got sore about anything. But I keep thinking about it anyway when I get very depressed. Finally, though, I got undressed and got in bed. I felt like praying or something when I was in bed, but I couldn't do it. I can't always pray when I feel like it. In the first place, I'm sort of an atheist. I like Jesus and all, but I don't care too much for most of the other stuff in the Bible. Take the disciples, for instance. They annoy the hell out of me, if you want to know the truth. They were all right after Jesus was dead and all, but while he was alive, they were about as much use to him as a hole in the head. All they did was keep letting him down. I like almost anybody in the Bible better than the disciples. If you want to know the truth, the guy I like best in the Bible, next to Jesus, was that lunatic and all that lived in the tombs and kept cutting himself with stones. I like him 10 times as much as the disciples, that poor bastard. I used to get in quite a few arguments about it when I was at the Wooten School with this boy that lived down the corridor, Arthur Childs. Old Childs was a Quaker and all, and he read the Bible all the time. He was a very nice kid, and I liked him, but I could never see eye to eye with him on a lot of stuff in the Bible, especially the disciples. He kept telling me if I didn't like the disciples, then I didn't like Jesus and all. He said that because Jesus picked the disciples, he was supposed to like them. I said I knew he picked them, but that he picked them at random. I said he didn't have time to go around analyzing everybody. I said I wasn't blaming Jesus or anything. It wasn't his fault that he didn't have any time. I remember I asked old Childs if he thought Judas, the one that betrayed Jesus and all, went to hell after he committed suicide. Childs said certainly. That's exactly where I disagreed with him. I said I'd bet $1,000 that Jesus never sent old Judas to hell. I still would, too, if I had $1,000. I think any one of the disciples would have sent him to hell and all, and fast, too, but I'll bet anything Jesus didn't do it. Old Childs said the trouble with me was that I didn't go to church or anything. He was right about that, in a way. I don't. In the first place, my parents are different religions, and all the children in our family are atheists. If you want to know the truth, I can't even stand ministers. The ones they've had at every school I've gone to, they all have these Holy Joe voices when they start giving their sermons. God, I hate that. I don't see why the hell they can't talk in their natural voice. They sound so phony when they talk. Anyway, when I was in bed, I couldn't pray worth a damn. Every time I got started, I kept picturing old Sonny calling me a crumb bum. Finally, I sat up in bed and smoked another cigarette. It tasted lousy. I must have smoked around 2 packs since I left Pensy. All of a sudden, while I was laying there smoking, somebody knocked on the door. I kept hoping it wasn't my door they were knocking on, but I knew damn well it was. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. I knew who it was, too. I'm psychic. "Who's there?" I said. I was pretty scared. I'm very yellow about those things. They just knocked again, though, louder. Finally, I got out of bed, with just my pajamas on, and opened the door. I didn't even have to turn the light on in the room because it was already daylight. Old Sonny and Maurice, the pimpy elevator guy, were standing there. "What's the matter? What do you want?" I said. Boy, my voice was shaking like hell. "Nothing much," old Maurice said. "Just $5. He did all the talking for the two of them. Old Sonny just stood there next to him with her mouth open and all. "I paid her already. I gave her $5. Ask her," I said. Boy, was my voice shaking. "It's $10, Chief. I told you that. $10 for a throw, $15 till noon. I told you that." "You did not tell me that. You said $5 a throw. You said $15 till noon, all right, but I distinctly heard you—" "Open up, Chief." "What for?" I said. God, my old heart was damn near beating me out of the room. I wished I was dressed at least. It's terrible to be just in your pajamas when something like that happens. "Let's go, Chief," old Maurice said. Then he gave me a big shove with his crummy hand. I damn near fell over on my can. He was a huge son of a bitch. The next thing I knew, he and old Sonny were both in the room. They acted like they owned the damn place. Old Sonny sat down on the window-sill. Old Maurice sat down in the big chair and loosened his collar and all. He was wearing this elevator operator's uniform. Boy, was I nervous. "All right, Chief, let's have it. I gotta get back to work." "I told you about 10 times I don't owe you a cent. I already gave her the 5—" "Cut the crap now. Let's have it." "Why should I give her another $5? I said. My voice was cracking all over the place. "You're trying to chisel me." Old Maurice unbuttoned his whole uniform coat. All he had on underneath was a phony shirt collar, but no shirt or anything. He had a big, fat, hairy stomach. "Nobody's trying to chisel nobody," he said. "Let's have it, Chief." "No!" When I said that, he got up from his chair and started walking towards me and all. It looked like he was very, very tired or very, very bored. God, was I scared. I sort of had my arms folded, I remember. It wouldn't have been so bad, I don't think, if I hadn't had just my goddamn pajamas on. "Let's have it, Chief." He came right up to where I was standing. That's all he could say. "Let's have it, Chief." He was a real moron. "No!" "Chief, you're gonna force me into roughing you up a little bit. I don't want to do it, but that's the way it looks," he said. "You owe us $5. "I don't owe you $5, I said. "If you rough me up, I'll yell like hell. I'll wake up everybody in the hotel, the police and all." My voice was shaking like a bastard. "Go ahead. Yell your goddamn head off. Fine," old Maurice said. "Want your parents to know you spent the night with a whore? High-class kid like you?" He was pretty sharp in his crummy way. He really was. "Leave me alone. If you said 10, it'd be different. But you distinctly—" "Are you gonna let us have it?" He had me right up against the damn door. He was almost standing on top of me, his crummy old hairy stomach and all. "Leave me alone. Get the hell out of my room," I said. I still had my arms folded and all. God, what a jerk I was. Then Sonny said something for the first time. "Hey, Maurice, want me to get his wallet?" she said. "It's right on the whatchamacallit." "Yeah, get it." Leave my wallet alone. I already got it, Sonny said. She waved $5 at me. See? All I'm taking is the 5 you owe me. I'm no crook. All of a sudden, I started to cry. I'd give anything if I hadn't, but I did. No, you're no crooks, I said. You're just stealing 5... Shut up, old Maurice said, and gave me a shove. Leave him alone, Hay, Sonny said. Come on, Hay. We got the doughios. Let's go. Come on, Hay. I'm coming, old Maurice said. But he didn't. I mean it, Maurice, Hay. Leave him alone. Who's hurting anybody, he said, innocent as hell. Then what he did, he snapped his finger very hard on my pajamas. I won't tell you where he snapped it, but it hurt like hell. I told him he was a goddamn dirty moron. What's that? He said. He put his hand behind his ear like a deaf guy. What's that? What am I? I was still sort of crying. I was so damn mad and nervous and all. You're a dirty moron, I said. You're a stupid, chiseling moron, and in about 2 years you'll be one of those scraggy guys that come up to you on the street and ask for a dime for coffee. You'll have snot all over your dirty, filthy overcoat, and you'll be... Then he smacked me. I didn't even try to get out of the way or duck or anything. All I felt was this terrific punch in my stomach. I wasn't knocked out or anything, though, because I remember looking up from the floor and seeing them both go out the door and shut it. Then I stayed on the floor a fairly long time, sort of the way I did with Stradlater, only this time I thought I was dying. I really did. I thought I was drowning or something. The trouble was I could hardly breathe. When I did finally get up, I had to walk to the bathroom all doubled up and holding onto my stomach and all. But I'm crazy. I swear to God I am. About halfway to the bathroom, I sort of started pretending I had a bullet in my guts. Old Maurice had plugged me. Now I was on the way to the bathroom to get a good shot of bourbon or something to steady my nerves and help me really go into action. I pictured myself coming out of the goddamn bathroom, dressed and all, with my automatic in my pocket and staggering around a little bit. Then I'd walk downstairs instead of using the elevator. I'd hold on to the banister and all, with this blood trickling out of the side of my mouth a little at a time. What I'd do, I'd walk down a few floors, holding onto my guts, blood leaking all over the place, and then I'd ring the elevator bell. As soon as old Maurice opened the doors, he'd see me with the automatic in my hand, and he'd start screaming at me in this very high-pitched yellow-belly voice to leave him alone. But I'd plug him anyway. 6 shots right through his fat, hairy belly. Then I'd throw my automatic down the elevator shaft, after I'd wiped off all the fingerprints and all. Then I'd crawl back to my room and call up Jane and have her come over and bandage up my guts. I pictured her holding a cigarette for me to smoke while I was bleeding and all. The goddamn movies. They can ruin you. I'm not kidding. I stayed in the bathroom for about an hour, taking a bath and all. Then I got back in bed. It took me quite a while to get to sleep. I wasn't even tired. But finally I did. What I really felt like, though, was committing suicide. I felt like jumping out the window. I probably would have done it, too, if I'd been sure somebody'd cover me up as soon as I landed. I didn't want a bunch of stupid rubbernecks looking at me when I was all gory. 15. I didn't sleep too long because I think it was only around 10 o'clock when I woke up. I felt pretty hungry as soon as I had a cigarette. The last time I'd eaten was those 2 hamburgers I had with Brossard and Ackley when we went into Hagerstown to the movies. That was a long time ago. It seemed like 50 years ago. The phone was right next to me, and I started to call down and have them send up some breakfast, but I was sort of afraid they might send it up with old Maurice. If you think I was dying to see him again, you're crazy. So I just laid around in bed for a while and smoked another cigarette. I thought of giving old Jane a buzz to see if she was home yet and all, but I wasn't in the mood. What I did do, I gave old Sally Hayes a buzz. She went to Mary A. Woodruff, and I knew she was home because I'd had this letter from her a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't too crazy about her, but I'd known her for years. I used to think she was quite intelligent, in my stupidity. The reason I did was because she knew quite a lot about the theater and plays and literature and all that stuff. If somebody knows quite a lot about those things, it takes you quite a while to find out whether they're really stupid or not. It took me years to find it out in old Sally's case. I think I'd have found it out a lot sooner if we hadn't necked so damn much. My big trouble is I always sort of think whoever I'm necking is a pretty intelligent person. It hasn't got a goddamn thing to do with it, but I keep thinking it anyway. Anyway, I gave her a buzz. First the maid answered, then her father, then she got on. "Sally?" I said. "Yes? Who is this?" she said. She was quite a little phony. I'd already told her father who it was. "Holden Caulfield. How are you?" "Holden, I'm fine. How are you?" "Swell. Listen, how are you anyway? I mean, how's school?" "Fine," she said. "I mean, you know." "Swell. Well, listen, I was wondering if you were busy today. It's Sunday, but there's always 1 or 2 matinees going on Sunday, benefits and that stuff. Would you care to go?" "I'd love to. Grand." Grand. If there's one word I hate, it's grand. It's so phony. For a second I was tempted to tell her to forget about the matinee, but we chewed the fat for a while. That is, she chewed it. She couldn't get a word in edgewise. First she told me about some Harvard guy. It probably was a freshman, but she didn't say, naturally, that was rushing hell out of her, calling her up night and day. Night and day, that killed me. Then she told me about some other guy, some West Point cadet that was cutting his throat over her, too. Big deal. I told her to meet me under the clock at the Biltmore at 2 o'clock, and not to be late, because the show probably started at 2:30. She was always late. Then I hung up. She gave me a pain in the ass, but she was very good-looking. After I made the date with old Sally, I got out of bed and got dressed and packed my bag. I took a look out the window before I left the room, though, to see how all the perverts were doing, but they all had their shades down. They were the height of modesty in the morning. Then I went down in the elevator and checked out. I didn't see old Maurice around anywhere. I didn't break my neck looking for him, naturally, the bastard. I got a cab outside the hotel, but I didn't have the faintest damn idea where I was going. I had no place to go. It was only Sunday, and I couldn't go home till Wednesday, or Tuesday the soonest. And I certainly didn't feel like going to another hotel and getting my brains beat out. So what I did, I told the driver to take me to Grand Central Station. It was right near the Biltmore, where I was meeting Sally later, and I figured what I'd do, I'd check my bags in one of those strong boxes that they give you a key to, then get some breakfast. I was sort of hungry. While I was in the cab, I took out my wallet and sort of counted my money. I don't remember exactly what I had left, but it was no fortune or anything. I'd spent a king's ransom in about 2 lousy weeks. I really had. I'm a goddamn spendthrift at heart. When I don't spend, I lose. Half the time, I sort of even forget to pick up my change at restaurants and nightclubs and all. It drives my parents crazy. You can't blame them. My father's quite wealthy, though. I don't know how much he makes. He's never discussed that stuff with me, but I imagine quite a lot. He's a corporation lawyer. Those boys really haul it in. Another reason I know he's quite well off, he's always investing money in shows on Broadway. They always flop, though, and it drives my mother crazy when he does it. She hasn't felt too healthy since my brother Allie died. She's very nervous. That's another reason why I hated like hell for her to know I got the axe again. After I put my bags in one of those strong boxes at the station, I went into this little sandwich bar and had breakfast. I had quite a large breakfast for me. Orange juice, bacon and eggs, toast and coffee. Usually I just drink some orange juice. I'm a very light eater, I really am. That's why I'm so damn skinny. I was supposed to be on this diet where you eat a lot of starches and crap, to gain weight and all, but I didn't ever do it. When I'm out somewhere, I generally just eat a Swiss cheese sandwich and a malted milk. It isn't much, but you get quite a lot of vitamins in the malted milk. H. V. Caulfield, Holden Vitamin Caulfield. While I was eating my eggs, these two nuns with suitcases and all, I guess they were moving to another convent or something and were waiting for a train, came in and sat down next to me at the counter. They didn't seem to know what the hell to do with their suitcases, so I gave them a hand. They were these very inexpensive-looking suitcases, the ones that aren't genuine leather or anything. It isn't important, I know, but I hate it when somebody has cheap suitcases. It sounds terrible to say it, but I can even get to hate somebody just looking at them if they have cheap suitcases with them. Something happened once. For a while, when I was at Elkton Hills, I roomed with this boy, Dick Slagle, that had these very inexpensive suitcases. He used to keep them under the bed instead of on the rack, so that nobody'd see them standing next to mine. It depressed holy hell out of me, and I kept wanting to throw mine out or something, or even trade with him. Mine came from Mark Cross, and they were genuine cowhide and all that crap, and I guess they cost quite a pretty penny. But it was a funny thing. Here's what happened. What I did, I finally put my suitcases under my bed instead of on the rack, so that old Slagle wouldn't get a goddamn inferiority complex about it. But here's what he did. The day after I put mine under my bed, he took them out and put them back on the rack. The reason he did it took me a while to find out, was because he wanted people to think my bags were his. He really did. He was a very funny guy that way. He was always saying snotty things about them, my suitcases, for instance. He kept saying they were too new and bourgeois, and that was his favorite goddamn word. He read it somewhere or heard it somewhere. Everything I had was bourgeois as hell. Even my fountain pen was bourgeois. He borrowed it off me all the time, but it was bourgeois anyway. We only roomed together about 2 months. Then we both asked to be moved. And the funny thing was, I sort of missed him after we moved, because he had a hell of a good sense of humor, and we had a lot of fun sometimes. I wouldn't be surprised if he missed me, too. At first, he only used to be kidding when he called my stuff bourgeois, and I didn't give a damn. It was sort of funny, in fact. Then, after a while, you could tell he wasn't kidding any more. The thing is, it's really hard to be roommates with people if your suitcases are much better than theirs. If yours are really good ones, and theirs aren't. You think if they're intelligent and all, the other person, and have a good sense of humor, that they don't give a damn whose suitcases are better, but they do. They really do. It's one of the reasons why I roomed with a stupid bastard like Stradlater. At least his suitcases were as good as mine. Anyway, these two nuns were sitting next to me, and we sort of struck up a conversation. The one right next to me had one of those straw baskets that you see nuns and Salvation Army babes collecting dough with around Christmas time. You see them standing on corners, especially on Fifth Avenue, in front of the big department stores and all. Anyway, the one next to me dropped hers on the floor, and I reached down and picked it up for her. I asked her if she was out collecting money for charity and all. She said no. She said she couldn't get it in her suitcase when she was packing it, and she was just carrying it. She had a pretty nice smile when she looked at you. She had a big nose, and she had on those glasses with sort of iron rims that aren't too attractive, but she had a hell of a kind face. I thought if you were taking up a collection, I told her, I could make a small contribution. You could keep the money for when you do take up a collection. Oh, how very kind of you, she said, and the other one, her friend, looked over at me. The other one was reading a little black book while she drank her coffee. It looked like a Bible, but it was too skinny. It was a Bible-type book, though. All the two of them were eating for breakfast was toast and coffee. That depressed me. I hate it if I'm eating bacon and eggs or something and somebody else is only eating toast and coffee. They let me give them $10 as a contribution. They kept asking me if I was sure I could afford it and all. I told them I had quite a bit of money with me, but they didn't seem to believe me. They took it, though, finally. The both of them kept thanking me so much it was embarrassing. I swung the conversation around to general topics and asked them where they were going. They said they were school teachers, and that they'd just come from Chicago, and that they were going to start teaching at some convent on 168th Street or 186th Street, or one of those streets way the hell uptown. The one next to me with the iron glasses said she taught English, and her friend taught history and American government. Then I started wondering like a bastard what the one sitting next to me that taught English thought about, being a nun and all, when she read certain books for English. Books not necessarily with a lot of sexy stuff in them, but books with lovers and all in them. Take old Eustacia Vi in The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. She wasn't too sexy or anything, but even so you can't help wondering what a nun maybe thinks about when she reads about old Eustacia. I didn't say anything, though, naturally. All I said was English was my best subject. "Oh, really? Oh, I'm so glad," the one with the glasses that taught English said. "What have you read this year? I'd be very interested to know." She was really nice. Well, most of the time we were on the Anglo-Saxons, Beowulf and old Grendel and Lord Randall, my son, and all those things. But we had to read outside books for extra credit once in a while. I read The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy, and Romeo and Juliet, and Julius. Oh, Romeo and Juliet! Lovely! Didn't you just love it? She certainly didn't sound much like a nun. Yes, I did. I liked it a lot. There were a few things I didn't like about it, but it was quite moving on the whole. What didn't you like about it? Can you remember? To tell you the truth, it was sort of embarrassing in a way to be talking about Romeo and Juliet with her. I mean, that play gets pretty sexy in some parts, and she was a nun and all. But she asked me, so I discussed it with her for a while. "Well, I'm not too crazy about Romeo and Juliet," I said. "I mean, I like them, but I don't know. They get pretty annoying sometimes. I mean, I felt much sorrier when old Mercutio got killed than when Romeo and Juliet did. The thing is, I never liked Romeo too much after Mercutio gets stabbed by that other man, Juliet's cousin. What's his name? Tybalt. That's right, Tybalt," I said. I always forget that guy's name. It was Romeo's fault. I mean, I liked him the best in the play, old Mercutio. I don't know. All those Montagues and Capulets, they're all right, especially Juliet, but Mercutio, it's hard to explain. He was very smart and entertaining and all. The thing is, it drives me crazy if somebody gets killed, especially somebody very smart and entertaining and all, and it's somebody else's fault. Romeo and Juliet, at least it was their own fault. "What school do you go to?" she asked me. She probably wanted to get off the subject of Romeo and Juliet. I told her Pensy, and she'd heard of it. She said it was a very good school. I let it pass, though. Then the other one, the one that taught history and government, said they'd better be running along. I took their check off them, but they wouldn't let me pay it. The one with the glasses made me give it back to her. "You've been more than generous," she said. "You're a very sweet boy." She certainly was nice. She reminded me a little bit of old Ernest Morrow's mother, the one I met on the train, when she smiled mostly. "We've enjoyed talking to you so much," she said. I said I'd enjoyed talking to them a lot, too. I meant it, too. I'd have enjoyed it even more, though, I think, if I hadn't been sort of afraid the whole time I was talking to them that they'd all of a sudden try to find out if I was a Catholic. Catholics are always trying to find out if you're a Catholic. It happens to me a lot, I know, partly because my last name is Irish, and most people of Irish descent are Catholics. As a matter of fact, my father was a Catholic once. He quit, though, when he married my mother. The Catholics are always trying to find out if you're a Catholic, even if they don't know your last name. I knew this one Catholic boy, Louis Cheney, when I was at the Wooten School. He was the first boy I ever met there. He and I were sitting in the first two chairs outside the goddamn infirmary the day school opened, waiting for our physicals, and we sort of struck up this conversation about tennis. He was quite interested in tennis, and so was I. He told me he went to the Nationals at Forest Hills every summer, and I told him I did too, and then we talked about certain hot-shot tennis players for quite a while. He knew quite a lot about tennis for a kid his age. He really did. Then, after a while, right in the middle of the goddamn conversation, he asked me, "Did you happen to notice where the Catholic Church is in town by any chance?" The thing was, you could tell by the way he asked me that he was trying to find out if I was a Catholic. He really was. Not that he was prejudiced or anything, but he just wanted to know. He was enjoying the conversation about tennis and all, but you could tell he would have enjoyed it more if I was a Catholic and all. That kind of stuff drives me crazy. I'm not saying it ruined our conversation or anything. It didn't. But it sure as hell didn't do it any good. That's why I was glad those two nuns didn't ask me if I was a Catholic. It wouldn't have spoiled the conversation if they had, but it would have been different, probably. I'm not saying I blame Catholics. I don't. I'd be the same way, probably, if I was a Catholic. It's just like those suitcases I was telling you about, in a way. All I'm saying is that it's no good for a nice conversation. That's all I'm saying. When they got up to go, the two nuns, I did something very stupid and embarrassing. I was smoking a cigarette, and when I stood up to say goodbye to them, by mistake, I blew some smoke in their face. I didn't mean to, but I did it. I apologized like a madman, and they were very polite and nice about it, but it was very embarrassing anyway. After they left, I started getting sorry that I'd only given them $10 for their collection. But the thing was, I'd made that date to go to a matinee with old Sally Hayes, and I needed to keep some dough for the tickets and stuff. I was sorry anyway, though. Goddamn money. It always ends up making you blue as hell. 16. After I had my breakfast, it was only around noon, and I wasn't meeting old Sally till 2 o'clock, so I started taking this long walk. I couldn't stop thinking about those two nuns. I kept thinking about that beat-up old straw basket they went around collecting money with when they weren't teaching school. I kept trying to picture my mother or somebody, or my aunt, or Sally Hayes's crazy mother, standing outside some department store and collecting dough for poor people in a beat-up old straw basket. It was hard to picture. Not so much my mother, but those other two. My aunt's pretty charitable. She does a lot of Red Cross work and all. But she's very well dressed and all, and when she does anything charitable, she's always very well dressed and has lipstick on and all that crap. I couldn't picture her doing anything for charity if she had to wear black clothes and no lipstick while she was doing it. And old Sally Hayes's mother, Jesus Christ. The only way she could go around with a basket collecting dough would be if everybody kissed her ass for her when they made a contribution. If they just dropped their dough in her basket, then walked away without saying anything to her, ignoring her and all, she'd quit in about an hour. She'd get bored. She'd hand in her basket and then go someplace swanky for lunch. That's what I liked about those nuns. You could tell, for one thing, that they never went anywhere swanky for lunch. It made me so damn sad when I thought about it. They're never going anywhere swanky for lunch or anything. I knew it wasn't too important, but it made me sad anyway. I started walking over toward Broadway, just for the hell of it, because I hadn't been over there in years. Besides, I wanted to find a record store that was open on Sunday. There was this record I wanted to get for Phoebe called Little Shirley Beans. It was a very hard record to get. It was about a little kid that wouldn't go out of the house because 2 of her front teeth were out and she was ashamed to. I heard it at Pensy. A boy that lived on the next floor had it, and I tried to buy it off him because I knew it would knock old Phoebe out, but he wouldn't sell it. It was a very old, terrific record that this colored girl singer, Estelle Fletcher, made about 20 years ago. She sings it very Dixieland and whorehouse, and doesn't sound at all mushy. If a white girl was singing it, she'd make it sound cute as hell. But old Estelle Fletcher knew what the hell she was doing, and it was one of the best records I ever heard. I figured I'd buy it in some store that was open on Sunday, and then I'd take it up to the park with me. It was Sunday, and Phoebe goes roller skating in the park on Sundays quite frequently. I knew where she hung out mostly. It wasn't as cold as it was the day before, but the sun still wasn't out, and it wasn't too nice for walking. But there was one nice thing. This family that you could tell just came out of some church were walking right in front of me, a father, a mother, and a little kid about 6 years old. They looked sort of poor. The father had on one of those pearl gray hats that poor guys wear a lot when they want to look sharp. He and his wife were just walking along, talking, not paying any attention to their kid. The kid was swell. He was walking in the street instead of on the sidewalk, but right next to the curb. He was making out like he was walking a very straight line, the way kids do, and the whole time he kept singing and humming. I got up closer so I could hear what he was singing. He was singing that song, If a Body Catch a Body Coming Through the Rye. He had a pretty little voice, too. He was just singing for the hell of it, you could tell. The cars zoomed by, brakes screeched all over the place. His parents paid no attention to him, and he kept on walking next to the curb and singing If a Body Catch a Body Coming Through the Rye. It made me feel better. It made me feel not so depressed anymore. Broadway was mobbed and messy. It was Sunday and only about 12 o'clock, but it was mobbed anyway. Everybody was on their way to the movies, the Paramount or the Astor or the Strand or the Capitol or one of those crazy places. Everybody was all dressed up because it was Sunday, and that made it worse. But the worst part was that you could tell they all wanted to go to the movies. I couldn't stand looking at them. I can understand somebody going to the movies because there's nothing else to do, but when somebody really wants to go and even walks fast so as to get there quicker, then it depresses hell out of me, especially if I see millions of people standing in one of those long, terrible lines all the way down the block, waiting with this terrific patience for seats and all. Boy, I couldn't get off that goddamn Broadway fast enough. I was lucky. The first record store I went into had a copy of Little Shirley Beans. They charged me $5 for it because it was so hard to get, but I didn't care. Boy, it made me so happy all of a sudden. I could hardly wait to get to the park to see if old Phoebe was around so that I could give it to her. When I came out of the record store, I passed this drugstore and I went in. I figured maybe I'd give old Jane a buzz and see if she was home for vacation yet. So I went in the phone booth and called her up. The only trouble was her mother answered the phone, so I had to hang up. I didn't feel like getting involved in a long conversation and all with her. I'm not crazy about talking to girls' mothers on the phone anyway. I should have at least asked her if Jane was home yet, though. It wouldn't have killed me. But I didn't feel like it. You really have to be in the mood for that stuff. I still had to get those damn theater tickets, so I bought a paper and looked up to see what shows were playing. On account of it was Sunday, there were only about 3 shows playing, so what I did was I went over and bought 2 orchestra seats for I Know My Love. It was a benefit performance or something. I didn't much want to see it, but I knew old Sally, the queen of the phonies, would start drooling all over the place when I told her I had tickets for that, because the Lunts were in it and all. She liked shows that are supposed to be very sophisticated and dry and all, with the Lunts and all. I don't. I don't like any shows very much, if you want to know the truth. They're not as bad as movies, but there's certainly nothing to rave about. In the first place, I hate actors. They never act like people. They just think they do. Some of the good ones do, in a very slight way, but not in a way that's fun to watch. And if any actor's really good, you can always tell he knows he's good, and that spoils it. You take Sir Laurence Olivier, for example. I saw him in Hamlet. D.B. took Phoebe and I to see it last year. He treated us to lunch first, and then he took us. He'd already seen it. And the way he talked about it at lunch, I was anxious as hell to see it, too. But I didn't enjoy it much. I just don't see what's so marvelous about Sir Laurence Olivier, that's all. He has a terrific voice, and he's a hell of a handsome guy, and he's very nice to watch when he's walking or dueling or something. But he wasn't at all the way D.B. said Hamlet was. He was too much like a goddamn general instead of a sad, screwed-up type guy. The best part in the whole picture was when old Ophelia's brother, the one that gets in the duel with Hamlet at the very end, was going away, and his father was giving him a lot of advice. While the father kept giving him a lot of advice, old Ophelia was sort of horsing around with her brother, taking his dagger out of the holster and teasing him and all while he was trying to look interested in the bull his father was shooting. That was nice. I got a big bang out of that. But you don't see that kind of stuff much. The only thing old Phoebe liked was when Hamlet patted this dog on the head. She thought that was funny and nice, and it was. What I'll have to do is, I'll have to read that play. The trouble with me is, I always have to read that stuff by myself. If an actor acts it out, I hardly listen. I keep worrying about whether he's going to do something phony every minute. After I got the tickets to the lunch show, I took a cab up to the park. I should have taken a subway or something, because I was getting slightly low on dough, but I wanted to get off that damn Broadway as fast as I could. It was lousy in the park. It wasn't too cold, but the sun still wasn't out, and there didn't look like there was anything in the park except dog crap and globs of spit and cigar butts from old men, and the benches all looked like they'd be wet if you sat down on them. It made you depressed. And every once in a while, for no reason, you got goose flesh while you walked. It didn't seem at all like Christmas was coming soon. It didn't seem like anything was coming. But I kept walking over to the mall anyway, because that's where Phoebe usually goes when she's in the park. She likes to skate near the bandstand. It's funny, that's the same place I used to like to skate when I was a kid. When I got there, though, I didn't see her around anywhere. There were a few kids around, skating and all, and 2 boys were playing flies up with a softball, but no Phoebe. I saw one kid about her age, though, sitting on a bench all by herself, tightening her skate. I thought maybe she might know Phoebe and could tell me where she was or something, so I went over and sat down next to her and asked her, "Do you know Phoebe Caulfield by any chance?" "Who?" she said. All she had on was jeans and about 20 sweaters. You could tell her mother made 'em for her, because they were lumpy as hell. "Phoebe Caulfield. She lives on 71st Street. She's in the 4th grade over at—" "You know Phoebe?" "Yeah, I'm her brother. You know where she is?" "She's in Miss Cowan's class, isn't she?" the kid said. "I don't know. Yes, I think she is." "She's probably in the museum then. We went last Saturday," the kid said. "Which museum?" I asked her. She shrugged her shoulders, sort of. "I don't know," she said. "The museum." "I know, but the one where the pictures are, or the one where the Indians are?" "The one where the Indians." "Thanks a lot," I said. I got up and started to go, but then I suddenly remembered it was Sunday. "This is Sunday," I told the kid. She looked up at me. "Oh, then she isn't." She was having a hell of a time tightening her skate. She didn't have any gloves on or anything, and her hands were all red and cold. I gave her a hand with it. Boy, I hadn't had a skate key in my hand for years. It didn't feel funny, though. You could put a skate key in my hand 50 years from now in pitch dark, and I'd still know what it is. She thanked me and all when I had it tightened for her. She was a very nice, polite little kid. God, I love it when a kid's nice and polite when you tighten their skate for them or something. Most kids are. They really are. I asked her if she'd care to have a hot chocolate or something with me, but she said no thank you. She said she had to meet her friend. Kids always have to meet their friend. That kills me. Even though it was Sunday and Phoebe wouldn't be there with her class or anything, and even though it was so damp and lousy out, I walked all the way through the park over to the Museum of Natural History. I knew that was the museum the kid with the skate key meant. I knew that whole museum routine like a book. Phoebe went to the same school I went to when I was a kid, and we used to go there all the time. We had this teacher, Miss Egeltinger, that took us there damn near every Saturday. Sometimes we looked at the animals, and sometimes we looked at the stuff the Indians had made in ancient times, pottery and straw baskets and all stuff like that. I get very happy when I think about it, even now. I remember after we looked at all the Indian stuff, usually we went to see some movie in this big auditorium, Columbus. They were always showing Columbus discovering America, having one hell of a time getting old Ferdinand and Isabella to lend him the dough to buy ships with, and then the sailors mutinying on him and all. Nobody gave too much of a damn about old Columbus, but you always had a lot of candy and gum and stuff with you, and the inside of that auditorium had such a nice smell. It always smelled like it was raining outside, even if it wasn't, and you were in the only nice, dry, cozy place in the world. I loved that damn museum. I remember you had to go through the Indian room to get to the auditorium. It was a long, long room, and you were only supposed to whisper. The teacher would go first, then the class. You'd be 2 rows of kids, and you'd have a partner. Most of the time my partner was this girl named Gertrude Levine. She always wanted to hold your hand, and her hand was always sticky or sweaty or something. The floor was all stone, and if you had some marbles in your hand and you dropped them, they bounced like madmen all over the floor and made a hell of a racket, and the teacher would hold up the class and go back and see what the hell was going on. She never got sore, though, Miss Egeltinger. Then you'd pass by this long, long Indian war canoe, about as long as 3 goddamn Cadillacs in a row, with about 20 Indians in it, some of them paddling, some of them just standing around looking tough, and they all had war paint all over their faces. There was one very spooky guy in the back of the canoe with a mask on. He was the witch doctor. He gave me the creeps, but I liked him anyway. Another thing, if you touched one of the paddles or anything while you were passing, one of the guards would say to you, "Don't touch anything, children." But he always said it in a nice voice, not like a goddamn cop or anything. Then you'd pass by this big glass case with Indians inside it, rubbing sticks together to make a fire, and a squaw weaving a blanket. The squaw that was weaving the blanket was sort of bending over, and you could see her bosom and all. We all used to sneak a good look at it, even the girls, because they were only little kids and they didn't have any more bosom than we did. Then, just before you went inside the auditorium, right near the doors, you passed this Eskimo. He was sitting over a hole in this icy lake, and he was fishing through it. He had about 2 fish right next to the hole that he'd already caught. Boy, that museum was full of glass cases. There were even more upstairs, with deer inside them drinking at water holes and birds flying south for the winter. The birds nearest you were all stuffed and hung up on wires, and the ones in back were just painted on the wall, but they all looked like they were really flying south, and if you bent your head down and sort of looked at them upside down, they looked in an even bigger hurry to fly south. The best thing, though, in that museum was that everything always stayed right where it was. Nobody'd move. You could go there 100,000 times, and that Eskimo would still be just finished catching those 2 fish. The birds would still be on their way south. The deers would still be drinking out of that water hole with their pretty antlers and their pretty skinny legs, and that squaw with the naked bosom would still be weaving that same blanket. Nobody'd be different. The only thing that would be different would be you. Not that you'd be so much older or anything. It wouldn't be that exactly. You'd just be different, that's all. You'd have an overcoat on this time, or the kid that was your partner in line the last time had got scarlet fever and you'd have a new partner. Or you'd have a substitute taking the class instead of Miss Egeltinger. Or you'd heard your mother and father having a terrific fight in the bathroom. Or you'd just passed by one of those puddles in the street with gasoline rainbows in them. I mean, you'd be different in some way. I can't explain what I mean. Even if I could, I'm not sure I'd feel like it. I took my old hunting hat out of my pocket while I walked and put it on. I knew I wouldn't meet anybody that knew me, and it was pretty damp out. I kept walking and walking, and I kept thinking about old Phoebe going to that museum on Saturdays the way I used to. I thought how she'd see the same stuff I used to see, and how she'd be different every time she saw it. It didn't exactly depress me to think about it, but it didn't make me feel gay as hell either. Certain things, they should stay the way they are. You ought to be able to stick them in one of those big glass cases and just leave them alone. I know that's impossible, but it's too bad anyway. Anyway, I kept thinking about all that while I walked. I passed by this playground and stopped and watched a couple of very tiny kids on a seesaw. One of them was sort of fat, and I put my hand on the skinny kid's end to sort of even up the weight, but you could tell they didn't want me around, so I let them alone. Then a funny thing happened. When I got to the museum, all of a sudden I wouldn't have gone inside for $1,000,000. It just didn't appeal to me. And here I'd walked through the whole goddamn park and looked forward to it and all. If Phoebe'd been there, I probably would have, but she wasn't. So all I did, in front of the museum, was get a cab and go down to the Biltmore. I didn't feel much like going. I'd made that damn date with Sally, though. 17. I was way early when I got there, so I just sat down on one of those leather couches right near the clock in the lobby and watched the girls. A lot of schools were home for vacation already, and there were about 1,000,000 girls sitting and standing around waiting for their dates to show up. Girls with their legs crossed, girls with their legs not crossed, girls with terrific legs, girls with lousy legs, girls that looked like swell girls, girls that looked like they'd be bitches if you knew them. It was really nice sightseeing, if you know what I mean. In a way, it was sort of depressing, too, because you kept wondering what the hell would happen to all of them. When they got out of school and college, I mean. You figured most of them would probably marry dopey guys that always talk about how many miles they get to a gallon in their goddamn cars, guys that get sore and childish as hell if you beat them at golf or even just some stupid game like ping pong, guys that are very mean, guys that never read books, guys that are very boring. But I have to be careful about that. I mean about calling certain guys bores. I don't understand boring guys. I really don't. When I was at Elkton Hills, I roomed for about 2 months with this boy, Harris Macklin. He was very intelligent and all, but he was one of the biggest bores I ever met. He had one of these very raspy voices, and he never stopped talking practically. He never stopped talking, and what was awful was he never said anything you wanted to hear in the first place. But he could do one thing. The son of a bitch could whistle better than anybody I ever heard. He'd be making his bed or hanging up stuff in the closet. He was always hanging up stuff in the closet. It drove me crazy. And he'd be whistling while he did it, if he wasn't talking in this raspy voice. He could even whistle classical stuff, but most of the time he just whistled jazz. He could take something very jazzy, like Tin Roof Blues, and whistle it so nice and easy, right while he was hanging stuff up in the closet, that it could kill you. Naturally, I never told him I thought he was a terrific whistler. I mean, you don't just go up to somebody and say you're a terrific whistler. But I roomed with him for about 2 whole months, even though he bored me till I was half crazy, just because he was such a terrific whistler, the best I ever heard. So I don't know about bores. Maybe you shouldn't feel too sorry if you see some swell girl getting married to them. They don't hurt anybody, most of them. And maybe they're secretly all terrific whistlers or something. Who the hell knows? Not me. Finally, old Sally started coming up the stairs, and I started down to meet her. She looked terrific, she really did. She had on this black coat and sort of a black beret. She hardly ever wore a hat, but that beret looked nice. The funny part is, I felt like marrying her the minute I saw her. I'm crazy. I didn't even like her much, and yet all of a sudden I felt like I was in love with her and wanted to marry her. I swear to God I'm crazy. I admit it. "Holden," she said, "it's marvelous to see you. It's been ages." She had one of these very loud, embarrassing voices when you met her somewhere. She got away with it because she was so damn good-looking, but it always gave me a pain in the ass. "Swell to see you," I said. I meant it, too. "How are you, anyway?" "Absolutely marvelous. Am I late?" I told her no, but she was around 10 minutes late, as a matter of fact. I didn't give a damn, though. All that crap they have in cartoons and the Saturday Evening Post and all, showing guys on street corners looking sore as hell because their dates are late, that's bunk. If a girl looks swell when she meets you, who gives a damn if she's late? Nobody. "We better hurry," I said. "The show starts at 2:40. We started going down the stairs to where the taxis are. "What are we going to see?" she said. "I don't know. The Luntz. It's all I could get tickets for." "The Luntz! Oh, marvelous!" I told you she'd go mad when she heard it was for the Luntz. We horsed around a little bit in the cab on the way over to the theater. At first she didn't want to because she had her lipstick on and all. But I was being seductive as hell, and she didn't have any alternative. Twice, when the goddamn cab stopped short in traffic, I damn near fell off the seat. Those damn drivers never even look where they're going. I swear they don't. Then, just to show you how crazy I am, when we were coming out of this big clinch, I told her I loved her and all. It was a lie, of course, but the thing is, I meant it when I said it. I'm crazy. I swear to God I am. "Oh, darling, I love you too," she said. Then, right in the same damn breath, She said, "Promise me you'll let your hair grow. Crew cuts are getting corny, and your hair's so lovely." Lovely, my ass. The show wasn't as bad as some I've seen. It was on the crappy side, though. It was about 500,000 years in the life of this one old couple. It starts out when they're young and all, and the girl's parents don't want her to marry the boy, but she marries him anyway. Then they keep getting older and older. The husband goes to war, and the wife has this brother that's a drunkard. I couldn't get very interested. I mean, I didn't care too much when anybody in the family died or anything. They were all just a bunch of actors. The husband and wife were a pretty nice old couple, very witty and all, but I couldn't get too interested in them. For one thing, they kept drinking tea or some goddamn thing all through the play. Every time you saw them, some butler was shoving some tea in front of them, or the wife was pouring it for somebody. And everybody kept coming in and going out all the time. You got dizzy watching people sit down and stand up. Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontanne were the old couple. They were very good, but I didn't like them much. They were different, though, I'll say that. They didn't act like people, and they didn't act like actors. It's hard to explain. They acted more like they knew they were celebrities and all. I mean, they were good, but they were too good. When one of them got finished making a speech, the other one said something very fast right after it. It was supposed to be like people really talking and interrupting each other and all. The trouble was, it was too much like people talking and interrupting each other. They acted a little bit the way old Ernie down in the village plays the piano. If you do something too good, then after a while, if you don't watch it, you start showing off. And then you're not as good anymore. But anyway, they were the only ones in the show, the Lunts I mean, that looked like they had any real brains. I have to admit it. At the end of the first act, we went out with all the other jerks for a cigarette. What a deal that was. You never saw so many phonies in all your life. Everybody smoking their ears off and talking about the play so that everybody could hear and know how sharp they were. Some dopey movie actor was standing near us having a cigarette. I don't know his name, but he always plays the part of a guy in a war movie that gets yellow before it's time to go over the top. He was with some gorgeous blonde, and the two of them were trying to be very blasé and all, like as if he didn't even know people were looking at him. Modest as hell. I got a big bang out of it. Old Sally didn't talk much, except to rave about the Lunts, because she was busy rubbering and being charming. Then all of a sudden, she saw some jerk she knew on the other side of the lobby. Some guy in one of those very dark gray flannel suits and one of those checkered vests, strictly Ivy League. Big deal. He was standing next to the wall, smoking himself to death and looking bored as hell. Old Sally kept saying, "I know that boy from somewhere." She always knew somebody, any place you took her, or thought she did. She kept saying that till I got bored as hell, and I said to her, "Why don't you go on over and give him a big soul kiss if you know him? He'll enjoy it." She got sore when I said that. Finally, though, the jerk noticed her and came over and said hello. You should have seen the way they said hello. You'd have thought they hadn't seen each other in 20 years. You'd have thought they'd taken baths in the same bathtub or something when they were little kids. Old Buddy Ruse. It was nauseating. The funny part was they probably met each other just once at some phony party. Finally, when they were all done slobbering around, old Sally introduced us. His name was George something, I don't even remember, and he went to Andover. Big, big deal. You should have seen him when old Sally asked him how he liked the play. He was the kind of a phony that have to give themselves room when they answer somebody's question. He stepped back and stepped right on the lady's foot behind him. He probably broke every toe in her body. He said the play itself was no masterpiece, but that the Lunts, of course, were absolute angels. Angels, for Christ's sake, angels. That killed me. Then he and old Sally started talking about a lot of people they both knew. It was the phoniest conversation you ever heard in your life. They both kept thinking of places as fast as they could, then they'd think of somebody that lived there and mention their name. I was all set to puke when it was time to go sit down again. It really was. And then, when the next act was over, they continued their goddamn boring conversation. They kept thinking of more places and more names of people that lived there. The worst part was, the jerk had one of those very phony Ivy League voices, one of those very tired, snobby voices. He sounded just like a girl. He didn't hesitate to horn in on my date, the bastard. I even thought for a minute that he was going to get in the goddamn cab with us when the show was over, because he walked about 2 blocks with us, but he had to meet a bunch of phonies for cocktails, he said. I could see them all sitting around in some bar with their goddamn checkered vests, criticizing shows and books and women in those tired, snobby voices. They kill me, those guys. I sort of hated old Sally by the time we got in the cab, after listening to that phony Andover bastard for about 10 hours. I was all set to take her home and all, I really was, but she said, "I have a marvelous idea." She was always having a marvelous idea. "Listen," she said, "what time do you have to be home for dinner? I mean, are you in a terrible hurry or anything? Do you have to be home any special time?" "Me? No special time," I said. Truer word was never spoken, boy. "Why?" "Let's go ice skating at Radio City." That's the kind of ideas she always had. "Ice skating at Radio City? You mean right now?" "Just for an hour or so. Don't you want to?" "If you don't want to—" "I didn't say I didn't want to. I said, sure, if you want to." "Do you mean it? Don't just say it if you don't mean it. I mean, I don't give a darn one way or the other." Not much, she didn't. "You can rent those darling little skating skirts," old Sally said. "Jeanette Galtz did it last week." That's why she was so hot to go. She wanted to see herself in one of those little skirts that just come down over their butt and all. So we went, and after they gave us our skates, they gave Sally this little blue butt-twitcher of a dress to wear. She really did look damn good in it, though, I have to admit it. And don't think she didn't know it. She kept walking ahead of me, so that I'd see how cute her little ass looked. It did look pretty cute, too, I have to admit it. The funny part was, though, we were the worst skaters on the whole goddamn rink. I mean, the worst. And there were some Lulus, too. Old Sally's ankles kept bending in till they were practically on the ice. They not only looked stupid as hell, but they probably hurt like hell, too. I know mine did. Mine were killing me. We must have looked gorgeous. And what made it worse, there were at least a couple of 100 rubbernecks that didn't have anything better to do than stand around and watch everybody falling all over themselves. "Do you want to get a table inside and have a drink or something?" I said to her finally. "That's the most marvelous idea you've had all day," she said. She was killing herself. It was brutal. I really felt sorry for her. We took off our goddamn skates and went inside this bar where you can get drinks and watch the skaters in just your stocking feet. As soon as we sat down, old Sally took off her gloves and I gave her a cigarette. She wasn't looking too happy. The waiter came up and I ordered a Coke for her, she didn't drink, and a Scotch and soda for myself. But the son of a bitch wouldn't bring me one, so I had a Coke too. Then I sort of started lighting matches. I do that quite a lot when I'm in a certain mood. I sort of let them burn down till I can't hold them any more. Then I drop them in the ashtray. It's a nervous habit. Then, all of a sudden, out of a clear blue sky, old Sally said, "Look, I have to know. Are you or aren't you coming over to help me trim the tree Christmas Eve? I have to know." She was still being snotty on account of her ankles when she was skating. "I wrote you I would. You've asked me that about 20 times. Sure I am." "I mean, I have to know," she said. She started looking all around the goddamn room. All of a sudden I quit lighting matches and sort of leaned nearer to her over the table. I had quite a few topics on my mind. "Hey, Sally," I said. "What?" she said. She was looking at some girl on the other side of the room. "Did you ever get fed up?" I said. "I mean, did you ever get scared that everything was going to go lousy unless you did something? I mean, do you like school and all that stuff?" "It's a terrific bore." "I mean, do you hate it? I know it's a terrific bore, but do you hate it is what I mean." "Well, I don't exactly hate it. You always have to—" "Well, I hate it. Boy, do I hate it," I said. "But it isn't just that, it's everything. I hate living in New York and all. Taxicabs, Madison Avenue buses with the drivers and all always yelling at you to get out at the rear door, and being introduced to phony guys that call the Lunds angels, and going up and down in elevators when you just want to go outside, and guys fitting your pants all the time at Brooks, and people always— "Don't shout, please," old Sally said, which was very funny because I wasn't even shouting. "Take cars," I said. I said it in this very quiet voice. "Take most people. They're crazy about cars. They worry if they get a little scratch on them, and they're always talking about how many miles they get to a gallon, and if they get a brand new car already, they start thinking about trading it in for one that's even newer. I don't even like old cars. I mean, they don't even interest me. I'd rather have a goddamn horse. A horse is at least human, for God's sake. A horse you can at least—" "I don't know what you're even talking about," old Sally said. "You jump from one—" "You know something," I said. "You're probably the only reason I'm in New York right now, or anywhere. If you weren't around, I'd probably be someplace way the hell off, in the woods or some goddamn place. You're the only reason I'm around, practically." "You're sweet," she said. But you could tell she wanted me to change the damn subject. "You ought to go to a boys' school sometime. Try it sometime," I said. "It's full of phonies, and all you do is study so that you can learn enough to be smart enough to be able to buy a goddamn Cadillac someday, and you have to keep making believe you give a damn if the football team loses, and all you do is talk about girls and liquor and sex all day, and everybody sticks together in these dirty little goddamn cliques. The guys that are on the basketball team stick together, the Catholics stick together, the goddamn intellectuals stick together, the guys that play bridge stick together, even the guys that belong to the goddamn Book of the Month Club stick together. If you try to have a little intelligent—" "Now listen," old Sally said. "Lots of boys get more out of school than that." I agree they do, some of them. But that's all I get out of it, see? That's my point. "That's exactly my goddamn point," I said. "I don't get hardly anything out of anything. I'm in bad shape. I'm in lousy shape." "You certainly are." Then, all of a sudden, I got this idea. "Look," I said, "here's my idea. How would you like to get the hell out of here? Here's my idea. I know this guy down in Greenwich Village that we can borrow his car for a couple of weeks. He used to go to the same school I did, and he still owes me $10. What we could do is, tomorrow morning, we could drive up to Massachusetts and Vermont and all around there, see? It's beautiful as hell up there. It really is." I was getting excited as hell the more I thought about it, and I sort of reached over and took old Sally's goddamn hand. What a goddamn fool I was. "No kidding," I said. "I have about $180 in the bank. I can take it out when it opens in the morning, and then I could go down and get this guy's car. No kidding. We'll stay in these cabin camps and stuff like that till the dough runs out. Then when the dough runs out, I could get a job somewhere, and we could live somewhere with a brook and all, and later on we could get married or something. I could chop all our own wood in the winter time and all. Honest to God, we could have a terrific time. What do you say? Come on, what do you say? Will you do it with me? Please." "You can't just do something like that," old Sally said. She sounded sore as hell. "Why not? Why the hell not?" "Stop screaming at me, please," she said, which was crap because I wasn't even screaming at her. End of side 3. To continue, turn the cassette over.